Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More, and in this episode I wanted to discuss a game system that, by all intents and purposes, I should love, and yet for some reason it hasn't quite made it up onto my favorite list yet. And that's part of what I wanted to talk about is why do we like the games that we like, and is it possible to have a game that is perfect and yet not be your favorite? I don't know. The game I'm talking about in this case is ShadowDark. ShadowDark is a phenomenal old school revival style game written by Kelsey Dion and published by the Arcane Library. It is great. I really like almost everything about how this game looks, how it feels on the table when the two times that I've played it. I love the book. The book is laid out in a wonderful fashion. So I want to kind of unpack all of this. Why do I like it so much? And yet, how, for some reason, why isn't it my favorite system that I want to use going forward now? But let's talk about the merits of the game system. Let's talk about the good stuff. First off, presentation. This is a nice, digest-sized but hardcover book. It's got a good presence on the shelf, looks good. You can instantly recognize what it is because you see ShadowDark written in with silver foil and a black cover. It fits in nicely with all my other OSR books without, having a weird misleveling where the other books are this tall and it's that tall, which happens with some of the books. It looks great on the table. Appearance wise and formatting wise of the book, chef's kiss. Kelsey Dion, I've seen some interviews with her, and she seems, by all intents and purposes, to be a Class A human being. I absolutely enjoy the way that she has forged for herself a presence within the OSR community and has been an absolute success at it because, unfortunately, the OSR community, right or wrong, does not have always the best reputation for embracing people who aren't your stereotypical gray-haired white male type person. And she is not any of those things, and she has made herself not only a success, but one of the great successes in this genre of RPG games. I mean, ShadowDark itself has permeated the atmosphere of the OSR to the point where I can't go into drive-through RPG looking at OSR stuff without tripping over someone's ShadowDark project, or their book, campaign setting, adventure, accessory, what have you. All my favorite creators have made stuff for ShadowDark. Professor DM, someone who I have learned a lot from over the years just by watching his videos, is a big fan of ShadowDark. There's a lot of people that really like ShadowDark, and that's fantastic. And I really like a lot of the ideas behind ShadowDark. I really like the fact that it still uses, advantage and disadvantage, but it also has a few other sensibilities that are very much more OSR in mindset. I really also enjoy the whole you track things in real time, so the torch burning is not locked into how many actions you do in the game, but how much time passes at the table. I love that stuff. This is the kind of immersive stuff that just really just jazzes me up for a game. Not only that, but when we look at the book, I have talked ad nauseum in some cases about formatting and layout for books in order to appeal to those people who, like myself, have a visual impairment. ShadowDark does that. So let's look at that. It's 2-column, not a problem in and of itself. We have a nice bold typeface that is a good size, not too small, not too big, and allows me to be able to read it comfortably with my prescription. Not only that, but each paragraph, each concept is its own paragraph, essentially. And they're all laid out in such a way that you almost feel like you're reading a series of bullet points. And I'm one of those people that I do appreciate a good set of bullet points when I'm trying to understand some concepts. It doesn't have to always be Gygaxian English. As much as I can enjoy a good Gygaxian English, there are times when I'm like, I just give me the details. Just sum up, okay? And ShadowDark is nothing but that sum up, which is great. The art. ShadowDark has some great black and white art. And it never gets in the way of understanding what's going on the page. The tables are laid out. I mean, here's an example of how the tables are laid out. Very clear, very bold, easy to read. If I was to print this book out on standard, like enlarge it to fit on a standard A4 piece of paper and print out my own copy and coil bind it and put it on my shelf, it would be just even easier to read and access. Like, that's fantastic. So let's be positive here. I want to get through the positive stuff before I say anything that like is a little off for me. My favorite version of ShadowDark is definitely this. The player's guide, player's quick start, and the GM's quick start. The quick start version of ShadowDark is phenomenal. I really have enjoyed reading this. I've probably read this more than I've read the big book. In fact, I can guarantee you I've read these more than I've read the big book because I finished reading these and I haven't finished reading this thing, which is one of the reasons why this is a let's talk about the game and not a RPG recommendation for the game, because I don't feel like I know the system well enough to be able to fully recommend it to you. But I will talk about what I like and what I don't like so far. All right, so let's get into a little bit more of that. I mean, we talk about the layout, and the layout in the quick start books is the same as what you're going to see in the main book. There's not a whole lot of differences. The material's a little bit different in the sense that they kind of only include the basic amount of material. But you know how you create a class. I mean, these classes, this is one page on how to play a fighter, and it's even more concise than in some of the other OSR books that I have and enjoy. And it has some cool options. So now the talents thing that you roll on whenever you level up your character, your level ups tend to be random. That's one thing that I'm a little on. On the one hand, I like random. I think that anything which prevents us from getting into the mindset of the character build is a good thing. And so in that sense, I will embrace the random every day of the week. But there is a part of me that sometimes is like, can I roll twice and then pick which number I want or something, some kind of thing like that. I don't know. That's something you work out with the DM. If you and the DM want to house rule it so it doesn't have to be as random for your table, good on you. Fine, not a problem. Okay. Monsters. Monsters actually work off of the same basic rules as the player characters, which means that a monster has a strength, dexterity, constitution, wisdom, intelligence, and charisma, just like the player characters do. Even the wild boar has those same abilities. That means that the monster blocks are a little bit larger, than your standard OSR monster stat block, but not by much, and I'm okay with it. That kind of like, that's still not a problem for me. Excuse me. And there's a lot of cool extra bits. I love the ShadowDark stuff. I haven't used it yet, but I enjoyed reading through it. It gave me some cool ideas. And then you've got all these nice cards that are pre-generated characters with character sheet on the other side. Look at that character sheet. I mean, it's this is large print, in my opinion, or larger print, but it still is kind of a character sheet on a note card scenario, which I appreciate. And while I wouldn't want to try to fit an entire ShadowDark character on a 3x5 note card, because I think the print would get so small that I wouldn't be able to read it comfortably, and I wouldn't want to inflict that on anyone else. I can definitely appreciate the fact that it would fit nicely on one piece of paper, which I love. The moment that I need two pieces of paper to do a standard character who's not a spellcaster in your system is the moment that I kind of go, maybe I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. Because I like to play the game and not bookkeep the game. But that's just me being very specific about things. Another thing that I have, this is not Arcane Library, but this is ShadowDark, is the Old School Revival Solo Role-Playing Guide by Arcane Sword Press. So that's another cool thing that I picked up for ShadowDark, but also for any other OSR game, because I was saying to myself, I've been using OSR Solo for a long time. Maybe there is something better out there that I haven't seen yet. So I was like, well, I'll take a look. And so far I've taken a look, and I like it. It's okay. It's a lot. So I'm not sure if I'm going to adopt it or not unless I'm playing ShadowDark. Not that it's locked to ShadowDark specifically. It has a lot of ideas that are system agnostic. It's just a thing in my head. I know that I'm being a little probably too specific and pedantic, which is, fine, but it's also my game, so I get to do that. But what it has that I like a lot is it has a dungeon creation system that allows you to kind of create your dungeon as you're playing, because it's a solo game. And I kind of like that. So that's one part of this book that I'm probably going to be using, whether I'm doing ShadowDark or not. But right now, it's associated with ShadowDark. So, excuse me. I like ShadowDark. I like a lot of the concepts that go into it. I like the fact that it's grim and gritty and dark, and those are all good things. I like how it's laid out. I like a lot of what they've done, what Kelsey has done with the characters. The Western Marches or West Marches Kickstarter that came out a while ago, happened a while ago. I backed that one all the way, all the way, but I got all the books, and I'm looking forward to those being delivered because I think that's a great. Hopefully maybe that will kickstart my real love for ShadowDark in a way that the core book hasn't so far. Not sure. But let's get into the few things that kind of just leave me going, about it. The big one for me is that this book is expensive. Yes, it is. It's about the same price as a 5th edition player's handbook, which is not a terrible price, especially since it's a one book fits all kind of book. So that I'm not necessarily attacking it just for that, but it is a little on the expensive side. So that's why I love the Quick Start Guide. I would actually advocate someone who's ShadowDark curious, don't get the big rule book, just get these guides, because you can buy them on their website. Or you can get the PDFs or buy the actual books like I did, and they're not crazy expensive. They're not cheap, but they're not crazy expensive. And then you can try out the system and see if you enjoy the changes to the rules and have a good time with it. And it's cool. The main book, little on the more expensive side, like I said, but I'm not even sure that I can say it's not worth it. I think it probably is. So that's not really a hard criticism in and of itself. What I will say, though, is that on top of being on the more expensive side for an OSR product, it's also locked behind the idea that you can only buy it from the Arcane Library. you're not going to see, to my knowledge, you won't see ShadowDark at your local game store. You're not going to see ShadowDark on Amazon. You're not going to, well, you might see someone else's book in support of ShadowDark on Amazon. ShadowDark itself is not going to be there. And while it does sometimes show up on eBay, a lot of sellers have this weird mentality going on with OSR products where they try to sell the book to you at higher than retail value. Because for some reason they start thinking that, oh, this must be, out of print or something. I ran across this a lot when I was trying to buy copies of the white box cyclopedia, where I would find a seller that was attempting to sell the book for the print on demand book for $100 when I can buy the print on demand book from drive-through for $60. Wrap your brain around that one. I actually contacted that seller and I let them know because it was just like, really, dude. Okay, come on. That's the print on demand version. That's a ridiculous price. Now they relented and now they're only charging $70 for it. Just like, or I think it was 65 now. I don't know. That's 65 is like still higher than what it takes to buy it, but at the same time, if I were to buy it from them, I wouldn't have to wait for it to be printed and mailed to me. So I guess maybe that's a little more worth it, but at the same time, I already have my copy, so I'm not really worried about it. I do find it funny though, and so that's something that the sellers do with ShadowDark as well. Perceived hard to get, so therefore they charge more for it. If you want to go to Arcane Library and buy from them specifically and give all your financial information to them specifically, then that's what you have to do in order to get your hands on the ShadowDark stuff, which, I'm not going to knock that in and of itself. Well, I do knock it a little bit because in this world where we have drive-through RPG, I see no reason why these things shouldn't be on drive-through. And why I shouldn't be able to go and get ahead and buy PDFs of at least the quick start version of ShadowDark from drive-through and have it either be print on demand or just buying PDFs. I think that would make it far more approachable and reachable for the vast majority of role players. On the other hand, keeping it in-house allows them to maintain control more of the PDFs and of the books, and they get a better idea of how things are really selling, and they're less likely to get stuck with a case where, let's say Amazon buys 60 copies of the book, only sells 10, and then sends 40 back to them. Meanwhile, they don't have the money to reimburse for the 40 because yada, 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 things have happened in the corporate world. So this prevents that from happening, which I get. But it is a barrier. It remains a barrier. And I'm not really a fan of closed ecosystems for games as much. It's okay. It's not obviously I bought these things. It's not a complete barrier for me. But it does raise my eyebrows a little bit when I can only find something from a sole source, because if something happens to that sole source for whatever reason, that means that the thing is gone. So if something were to happen to the Arcane Library website, then for however long it was down, no one would be able to access anything about the ShadowDark core game. Whether that's a temporary down or a permanent down because of some kind of denial of service attack, or if it is a case where, Kelsey decides to change gears and do something else, then, which, any author can do. But it just feels weird because at that moment, then suddenly ShadowDark is not available to anyone except on the secondhand book market. There's not even a stock of books like left at your Barnes and Noble that you could maybe try to track down if you wanted to. Whatever. I feel like that's a nitpicky thing, though, so that's probably just me. Don't let that be the reason why you don't buy ShadowDark if you're interested. And if you are interested, go buy it. I support ShadowDark. I don't know why I don't love it as much as I do. Or I feel like I don't love it as much as I should. Because I should. Because every box that I have set for myself as to what I like about an OSR game, this game ticks those boxes, except for the accessibility for buying it easily and cheaply. That's the only one it doesn't tick. Is it very atmospheric? Yes. Is it easy to read? Yes. Is it does it have great evocative art? Yes. Are the rules concise? Yes. Are, it has all these things. So by all intents and purposes, I should be saying, yes, this is the greatest game ever. And it is a great game, but it's not my favorite. And I find that fascinating, and I'm not sure exactly what it is. So my guess is, here's my guess. I'm going to take a drink. My guess is that A, I have read so many different game systems at this point. And ShadowDark is such a distillation of all the things that I like that whenever I pick it up to read it, I feel like I've read it before. And that makes it hard to keep going sometimes because I'm like, I know this. I can run it. It's fine. I can't because there are differences. But there's that thing, that weird voice in your head that says, no, you're good. You already know this. You're fine. Don't worry about it. And so it can make it hard to keep the book in your hand when you've got like other chores you need to work on. And you're just like, I got to put this down because I got to do the dishes. And then you get stuck at doing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen and yada, yada, yada. And then you don't get back to the book. And then you're out of time for the day. And had this happen a couple of times and you just put the book back on the shelf and move on to a different book. Maybe that's part of what happened. I don't know. Another thing that could have happened is it's possible that because I know so many people that love this game and they're people that I respect, which means that I know that if I really dig into it, I will love it too. It also triggers that part of my brain that knows that I can be obsessive compulsive and is trying to protect me from becoming obsessive compulsive about ShadowDark and wanting to use it all the time and wanting it to be the best game ever. I'm kidding around. But maybe that's part of what's going on. I don't know. That could be it. That makes about as much sense as anything else right now. The other thing is there's a lot of material out there for ShadowDark. There's so much material out there for ShadowDark, and it's cool material. I have yet to see anything that makes me look at it and say, I don't like that as much. The only thing that I have seen out there sometimes that I didn't like was some people did not follow the formatting style of ShadowDark, where you get everything clear and easy to read, and instead they kind of overpack their tables and they make the print size smaller because they're trying to get more information into the same page size. And then it makes it harder for me to read comfortably. But that's not in the Arcane Library's products. That's in the third-party stuff. So, that's not really it can't be a criticism of the system itself. Okay. All right. The other thing that, and this is kind of a nonsensical thing, but I see we talked about the fact that the book is expensive and can be hard to get a hold of. When ShadowDark first came out and I first started hearing about it, I wanted to get my hands on a copy. And for the life of me, I could not find one because it was out of stock at the Arcane Library and they were the sole source of how to find the book. And so I had to wait. And I couldn't, at the time, I couldn't even get the ShadowDark Quick Start books. Those were out of stock too, if I recall correctly at the time. They came back in stock later, and I was able to get my copies of them, but this didn't happen until, months and months and months later, when I was finally also had been playing the game with a DM of mine, excuse me, and had actually played those 2 sessions that I've played of ShadowDark, and finally was able to get my hands on the copies after that. So maybe my ambivalence towards the system relates to my own difficulty in getting my hands on the copy when I initially wanted it, and having to wait so long. And so there could be a little bit of that in there. And I imagine that I'm not the only one that sometimes can feel that about games. I mean, I had a similar experience when I tried to get into Disney's Lorcana, which is a collectible trading card game that is set in all the Disney universes, and it's kind of like Magic the Gathering, for those of you that don't know. And when it first came out, the company that was making it kind of vastly underestimated how popular it was going to be. And so it was almost impossible to get card decks to actually just learn how to play the game, because the speculators had grabbed it and turned it into we're instantly trying to turn it into a cash cow for themselves, which meant that people like me, the casual players, couldn't get their hands on anything because certain collectors and speculators that already bought everything. And I have a certain amount of bitterness about that in card games in general, which is why I don't play them anymore at all. And so maybe that had an effect on my appreciation of ShadowDark as a system, and that's not fair to ShadowDark. That's a my head problem. That's not a ShadowDark problem. So I want to make that one clear. This is not a criticism of the system. This is just circumstance. And boy, sometimes circumstance plays merry heck with us. All right. So those are my thoughts about why somehow this isn't like the main game for me right now. The other reason is, and this is definitely a me opinion thing. At the same time that ShadowDark was gaining in popularity, I was absolutely loving White Box, the Swords and Wizardry White Box, especially with including the White Box Omnibus by James Spahn. And I was using that for a lot of stuff. And I was using White Box Continual Light by Tankar for a lot of stuff. And I felt like I had my system, and I didn't really want to jump to a new one. And in a way, that might have had an effect on me of just like not me being a stubborn jerk, essentially. But that could have affected it. I know I am a stubborn person. Hence why I make this channel and talk about so many other smaller scale things, because I stubbornly refuse to want to talk too much about the main games in our industry, or want to play them for various reasons. That's what the previous video was about. I'm not going to get into that again here. So, do I like ShadowDark? Yes, I do. I think that ShadowDark is really cool. I am glad that it has such a huge presence in the OSR community. I am very glad that it is an open vehicle for people to enjoy the OSR, that it bridges that gap between a lot of OSR kind of mentality and 5th edition style mechanics, that it functions as an appropriate bridge for people who have been like 5th edition only players and now are kind of OSR curious. ShadowDark is a great way for them to dive into a system that is highly supportive, is constantly evolving, and but still has all that neat little OSR stuff that teaches them, how to play the game in a slightly different fashion that isn't fantasy superheroes. So I am not negative on ShadowDark. I am not trying to say that it is a bad game in any way, shape, or form. It is a great game. I don't know why it's not my favorite. I've kind of talked about why at this point a little bit, why I think it might not be. But I also would think that like it's, like there's so many games that I do like that are, have such smaller presence than ShadowDark and even harder to get a hold of than ShadowDark that I can't even say that those are, I don't know for a fact that those are the reasons. Like the Prince Valiant storytelling game, when I was trying to get my hands on those books are even smaller than ShadowDark, and they were $50 each, and it was hard to get my hands on them, but I did. Um, now, now the game, probably partially my fault because I probably bought too many copies, but now getting Prince Valiant storytelling game on eBay, the prices are ranging from like, $90 to like $120 for copies of this game, and in some cases higher than that. I don't buy those books, by the way, when they get that expensive. That's ridiculous, and I haven't bought anything for the game in a long time. Partially because the prices got really crazy, and also because I have enough copies to be able to have copies for every player at my table, were I to run a game using that system, and that's kind of all I wanted. Um, so with ShadowDark, there's not a whole lot of reasons why I shouldn't like it. There's every reason why I should. Yet, for my money, I'm still a white box cyclopedia fan. And I'm not entirely sure why it is, aside from maybe there's some kind of weird loyalty to an author concept, but I don't think that's actually what's going on. Um, so I'm going to keep trying, and I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to keep reading the book when I can, and I'm going to keep learning about it, like I said, and I'm going to run a solo game in it eventually, and try to get my head around the game in a better sense than I did in those 2 game sessions. But I kind of, I wish I liked it more. I wish it made me more passionate than it does. Because I do like the idea of having larger systems that the OSR can kind of rally around to make it more approachable for the younger audience or for just the newer audience. And I think that's what ShadowDark does, more so than Old School Essentials. Old School Essentials, while a fantastic collection of books, and I have read some of the basic versions of them and played a game or two in it. That one I don't enjoy as much, primarily because I had already been fully invested in Swords and Wizardry as an OSR game at that point. Also, because it didn't feel different enough for me from just buying a PDF copy of Basic Edition D&D and just playing Basic Edition D&D. I mean, if that's really what you want, why not just do that? One of the reasons why I liked Swords and Wizardry is because it was a distillation of original D&D before Basic came out. And that kind of, I know it sounds like a really nitpicky difference, but it made all the difference to me as a person. And it reminds me of how emotional some of our decisions about the games that we love and the games that we don't can be. And I think that is, in a sense, the crux of why we choose one game and not another. Yes, mechanics make a difference. And we can absolutely love a mechanic or hate a mechanic. You can love the art, you can hate the art. And that some of those things will make a difference as to why you play a game or don't play a game. But in some cases, you can have a situation where you love the mechanics, you love the art, you like everything about the game, but you don't play it. And that seems like it comes down to an emotional thing. It comes down to personal comfort. Even though I love the Cypher system and Numenera, I absolutely adore it. It is a fantastic system. I love GMing for it. I love playing it. And yet, for some reason, all the times in the past when I tried to solo play Cypher system, even though I got a great emulator for it, just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. And it had nothing to do with the mechanics. It had nothing to do with my appreciation of the system or my knowledge of how the system works. It didn't sit right. And maybe that's because emotionally I associate the Cypher system with playing with a particular group of people. And since I wasn't playing with those people, I wasn't as engaged. Maybe that's part of what that was. Or maybe it's because I wasn't getting to engage with the DM and player feedback loop that is the Cypher system, because that's what Cypher really evolves around, is the kind of feedback between player and DM as you are creating this scene. The DM gets to have, not only are they creating the scene, but then they can later influence the scene through pardon the intrusion moments. And that's one of the things I love about DMing for the Cypher system, is kind of the ability to engage fully in improv in my DMing and not break the system, because the system is designed to support that kind of improv in ways that, say, Dungeons and Dragons isn't really designed for. And I include any versions of OSR games with that as well. So maybe that was part of why Cypher system, as much as awesome as it is, doesn't make it into my solo game repertoire. And maybe ShadowDark is one of those games that falls under it ticks all the boxes, but because of emotional reasons I can't choose it. I don't know. There are other games like that I, by all rights and purposes, I should absolutely adore, and yet I don't. And I'm pretty sure I'm not alone on that one. I think there's a lot of us that have that game in their back pocket that they would love to play, and yet somehow they never get to play it. And sometimes that's okay. For the longest time, that was me in The Riddle of Steel. I owned that book for probably more than a decade. Never got to play it. I had the entire line of books at one point for years and just read them. Never got to play it. Tried every once in a while to get a game going. But the problem was I could never find anyone who actually knew how to DM the game to DM the game for me, because I didn't understand the rules enough to be able to run it myself, even though I really adored the concepts behind the rules. But they interacted with each other in such a way that I felt like I needed to have it demoed for me to make it work. So that's another game that is, I probably could have DM'd the game just fine, but I couldn't get across that emotional hurdle of feeling like I had to have it demoed for me, and therefore I could not run it. And something similar goes on when I talk about Legendary Adventures by Gary Gygax. That's another game that I got introduced to by the author of Dungeon Dwellers, by the way, Joseph Wolf. He introduced me to Legendary Adventures. Legendary Adventures is a fantastic game system. It has a lot of really neat stuff about it, and I really just enjoyed it. I mean, if you enjoy high Gygaxian language, this book is full of it. But outside of playing with Joseph Wolf, I never really got to play the game or engage with it, even though I tried. I bought a bunch of the books for it, and I read them, and I thought they were fantastic. I really loved there's a starter adventure called, I think it's called The Road, where you start off as kind of yourself, and as the adventure goes on, you slowly build your legendary adventure character by making choices in the module in order to determine what your class and your heritage is and where your ability points go and like all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was brilliant. I want to write an adventure like that for another game system. It's such a cool idea because to me, it also relates to how you create a character in, say, like an Elder Scrolls game, where you go through that intro period and you slowly learn how the game works. And as you learn how the game works, you become better at playing it. And by the time you're done with the introduction section, you've got a whole character, but you were introduced to that, place piece by piece. Excuse me. Talking a lot today. But the Legendary Adventures is very much an emotional thing for me. Emotionally, I love that game. I think it's great. But for various reasons, I don't run it myself. And I feel like I can't because I don't know it well enough, even though I've sat there and I've read a whole bunch of stuff for it, which could mean that it's just a more complex game. Could also be a mental block on my part. I'm sure I'm hardly alone. I think that's one of the main reasons why so many people get so attached to, say, 5th edition D&D and don't want to move on to other systems because they form an emotional bond with the system through the friends that they play with and through the people that the game has connected them to, either the friends that they're playing with, the DMs who are running games for them, or Critical Role as an example. Us critters are a bunch of crazy people, and I love it most of the time. But every once in a while, I look at this fan community and go, "What?" All right, but it's emotional. It's an emotional bond, and it makes no sense. It would make perfect sense to look at 5th edition of D&D and say, "I like playing this game, and you know what? Maybe try something else similar to that to see if I like it too. Let's broaden my experiences." That makes sense in the head. But emotionally, you're so attached to what this is that, yeah, you want to play sci-fi, but you don't want to give up on your comfort zone. And 5th edition has become your comfort zone. Especially if you've been playing 5th edition for like close to 10 years. How long that the 2014 edition was out last year. So I kind of get it. And that's part of what this is about, what this video is about our emotional connection to games and how that emotional connection to games can sometimes make us not play a game that otherwise should tick off every box that we say we like in a game. It's a fascinating thing, and I'm comfortable talking about my own experiences with this because I am positive that other people have similar experiences with other games in this hobby. I mean, there's so many people like myself out there who have these kind of just thoughts in their heads, and maybe not everyone has articulated it out. Maybe not everyone has sat down and said, why am I emotionally attached to this game? Or am I emotionally attached to this game? So there's that. That's one of the reasons why I am actually such a big proponent of people trying so many different game systems so that you can kind of break that emotional bond to one game and allow yourself to experience the full plethora of options and ideas within RPG systems. We're not meant to have one size fits all in this ecosystem. I mean, GURPS certainly tries, and all respect to Steve Jackson Games, because they have made one kick-ass toolbox. Pardon my French. GURPS is a great toolbox. So is Cypher System, actually. If you divorce it from Numenera as the setting and just do the cipher system itself, my books are up here. That's why I'm pointing there. My pure cipher books are up here. And if you just take that as a toolbox, it's great. It actually, in my mind, it's a lot like GURPS. It has so many options that you can sit there and you can spend hours fine-tuning a character to make it exactly what you want. And there are so many options in it that it makes all the class and heritage options in any version of Dungeons and Dragons pale in comparison. If people talk about, oh, 5th edition, there's like so many different races and so many different classes, and I can put them together this way and that way, and it's so cool. I can make this unique build. Like, yeah. Cypher System would like you to hold their beer. You can modify everything. There, it is so much more customizable than 5th edition characters in any way, shape, or form. It's hysterical. But having said that, it is also something that a lot of people, they don't want, you tell them that, and they don't want to try it anyway. Or despite being told that, they don't want to try it because emotionally they're connected to 5th edition or whatever edition of the game that they like the most. Similar thing happens with people that play Pathfinder. No disrespect to Pathfinder. Pathfinder is a great system. I don't like it myself. I don't like playing it anymore. I used to, way back in the day, back when Pathfinder first edition first came out. I was a playtester for it. I bought the playtesting book. It was great. Tried to run the Rise of the Rune Lords. That's the word. That whole adventure thing. I tried to run the whole thing for some friends. Didn't go well, but that's more of a friend group thing than it is an issue with the system. So it was great, but it just got so complex. There were so many different options and so many different builds and ways to break the game that I fell out of love with Pathfinder. And I have found that there are a lot of people that really love Pathfinder. And some of the people that really love Pathfinder, I look at them and I'm like, I look at them and think, you're like me. You don't like some of the stuff that Pathfinder does, but you're still playing it. And maybe that's because that's what your group plays and you don't want to leave your group. Okay, that's actually a fair reason, and I support that. Even playing a system that you hate is made tolerable when you play it with people that you like being around. There's nothing wrong with playing a game you don't like. There's nothing wrong with playing a game that you like that someone else doesn't. Everyone's got their own tastes. Please embrace what you want to embrace. I'm not trying to tell people what they should and shouldn't like. If you like Pathfinder, if you like 5th edition, if you like anything, heck, I made a comment in my last video about Fatal. If you're one of the probably very few people that really, really like Fatal and think it's the best thing ever, I question certain things, but at the same time, you do you, just don't tell me about it. I'm teasing. But there's a lot of emotions that get attached to the games that we play. And it's one of the things that allows us to have this whole concept of the RPG as a ecosystem, as I think Hasbro was, or Wizards of the Coast referred to it as a lifestyle brand, or maybe that wasn't them, someone else did, I don't know. I can see that. I can see why people get that emotional attachment to things. I try not to be that attached to any one game system. I am attached to the hobby as a whole. Anyone who knows me knows that. But that's kind of it. So maybe that's why. Maybe the emotions aren't there for me in ShadowDark. And I kind of have to be okay with that. And maybe, in a year that'll change, and I'll have finished reading the main rulebook, and I'll have embraced the Western Reaches Player's Guide and all the other books that are coming out with that, and I will be a complete and utter ShadowDark fanboy by the time all that's done. And in that case, if that happens, I salute future me. More power to me. But and maybe I won't. Maybe I'll read it all and I'll say, you know what? It's awesome. I like it, but I just don't dig it as much. And it sits on my shelf and along with the other games that I like but don't play. Um, and I'm meandering a lot in this one. I know that this is a topic that, probably might feel awkward and weird to some people, and some people might think, oh, of course. I mean, come on, man, you're not saying anything new. Uh, Not really, no. I'm not trying to necessarily say anything new. Uh, there's so much discourse about gaming in our little hobby. And there's so many people that everyone feels they have the one true way. And I kind of like listening to everyone's different version of the one true way, because sometimes they get something that I can kind of incorporate into my and view on gaming. I mean, Bob the World Builder is another great YouTuber that has a lot of cool ideas and ways of visualizing D&D that supports a positive view of the game and the hobby in general. And I salute that guy because he does so much work at remaining positive throughout all the things that have happened in his own, neck of the woods. So full support to like Bob the World Builder and Professor Dungeon Master. Um, those are the two people that I really enjoy following. Ginny D is another YouTuber that has done a lot of great work at both D&D specific material and also Dungeons and Dragons adjacent material in order to kind of promote the a more full expression of the hobby. And I think that she does some great work too. Her music is hysterical. I love her bardic inspiration, and all those other videos that she does. It's so funny. Um, so there's a lot out there. And there's a lot out there that people can get emotionally attached to. And there's a lot of games that you can get emotionally attached to. And sometimes there's games that we get emotionally attached to that maybe we shouldn't. And we should let go. I've got a few games that have been dead for many years that I should probably not be so obsessing with. The Prince Valiant system might just be one of those because I don't think that'll ever come back into print. As much as I would love it to, and maybe I should just let it go and not do anything else with it because, oh my gosh, it's so niche. And maybe that's the way Corp is too. Maybe Corp is too niche, and like there's gonna be like 20 people that actually want to play it in the United States and whatnot. But at the same time, like I it's fun for me. It's a fun part of the hobby, and like yeah, I'm not saying that ShadowDark is going to be like the best system for me in the world. I'm not attached to it the way I am to other systems, like the White Box Cyclopedia and the Dungeon Adventures by James Spawn. I'm not as attached to it. Maybe that'll change. It has before. I used to be so attached to the Riddle of Steel that I never thought that I would get rid of it. And yet a few years ago I had to downsize my shelves for various reasons, and I finally just said it's time. I haven't played this game in over 10 years. I have no intention of playing this game. It's just gathering dust. Let it back out into the world. Let someone else who might actually play it get their hands on copies of the books. And so I did. I let it go. And there's other games that I've also let go during that time. And there's more time. And like the same thing happened with my 5th edition books, because I realized that it didn't make me happy anymore. I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And so I just let it go. And I had to embrace that part of the hobby because, as you can tell, I have a lot of stuff. And this is even in my full shelves that you're seeing. You're just seeing a piece of it. I have a lot of stuff. And I don't really use most of it on a regular basis. Sometimes I use it for a short while and then it sits on the shelf for years. Then I'll pick it up again for a month or two, and then it goes back on the shelf. But most of the time, it'll just sit on the shelf. Like there are some of these books for Numenera that after the initial poke through when I first bought them, they've just sat there. Now, part of that is because the DM that runs Numenera really doesn't has asked that I don't read the adventures in those in order to still have some mystery and wonder when we do our next Numenera campaign. And I try to follow that because I can appreciate where they're coming from. But at the same time, they're right there. And I like them. And I'm not planning on getting rid of those anytime soon because I like Numenera as a setting, even if I'm not actively reading it and running games for it at the moment. There's a lot of other stuff that kind of falls into that category on these shelves. And I don't know. It gets emotional. When I think about clearing games out of the shelves, it gets emotional. When I think of adding games to the shelf, I have to be very careful because sometimes I can grab a game and be like, this will be the new thing. And I'm not going to run anything else for the next year. And I put her on, I grab it, I read it, I put her on the shelf. And then I don't touch it again for that whole year. Like, well, what happened? Well, life happened. Maybe I wasn't able to run a game for a while, and then interests changed and things like that. Attention deficit disorder tends to do that to you. Just how life works. I have totally meandered off topic for quite a while. Sorry about that. All right, so trying to bring this back around, we're going to try to bring this to an end. ShadowDark, awesome system. No, I'm not running it right now. I am not sure why I'm not fanboying insane amounts over this system. By all rights and purposes, I should. This should be the system that makes me go, ah, like Kevin McAllister and just be absolutely overjoyed, although he was really afraid in that moment, but you know what I'm talking about. I should be absolutely just over the moon for the system, but for some reason I'm not. And I think that comes down to the emotional bonds that we make with different games and different systems, and how sometimes that can override what happens in our head, and why our head says we shouldn't like something. What games do you think you have an unreasonable attachment to? I'd be curious to hear about that. Mostly so we can just share stories if you want in the comments section down below. And maybe you've got a game in there that you're like jonesing for, and it's a game that I haven't seen before, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I got to check that out. Haha. Let's spread the wave. I'm kidding. But no, let's share those things. Let's share different things. There's a bunch of games that I'd love to talk about that I don't necessarily talk about. Partially because I no longer own copies of them, or because I just don't see a place that I would play them again. Star Frontiers being a good example of that. It's an interesting system, not a great system, but an interesting system. And I just never see a reason why I'd ever play it again, so I got rid of it years ago. Because I'm not necessarily a collector. I know it might look like I am, but I don't think of myself as a collector. I think of myself as someone who is buying books that he intends to use. And if they don't get used, they go away. And I think that's, in my mind, that's a healthier thing to do than just buy things and have them sit on your shelf. Not to knock collectors, because no, collectors have various reasons for doing what they do. And sometimes they're trying to curate a collection so that they know they have all of the things for different lines, and that gives them satisfaction and joy. And I can definitely appreciate that because I made sure I did my best to try to get all of the things for Numenera, 2nd edition. And I got a bunch of 1st edition stuff on there as well. I just I really liked the system, and so I needed to have that. When I did Riddle of Steel, I tried to make sure that I had all the printed books for Riddle of Steel. Um, and I just enjoy being able to read them and look at them. And I enjoy looking at these books when I do. And same with the Prince Valiant storytelling game. I mean, there's only 2 books in that system. It's really easy to get like the full collection of books, and then you're done. Um, and it's just neat to do that. But at the same time, if you're not using them and they are just gathering dust, you know, maybe you are okay with that because you have space in your living situation and you don't plan on moving anywhere anytime soon. Um, and that's awesome. I mean, good on you. You know, full support. I've lived a life where I've moved a lot. At one point, I was moving once every 2 years, trying to chase low rent in apartments and or having to move due to various circumstances, and that's just life. You don't always get to live the kind of life that you want. That's just how it goes. And because of that, I would amass collections of things and then have to get rid of them because I couldn't afford to have them shipped. I would have to have things stored with family, and then that would get expensive for the family, and then I felt guilty. We would lose access to where the stuff had been stored, and I would have to go and get it, and that would be an unexpected expense and things like that. There's any number of things that would happen that have caused me to kind of force myself to let go of that collection mentality. And maybe that's also why I tend to have an emotional attachment to the games that I do keep, and why sometimes I can be reluctant to let go of those for new games, because even though that new game is supposed to be amazing. Um, and so maybe that's why, despite the fact that I own the core rulebook for ShadowDark, and I'm going to have all the West Marches stuff when that comes out, or West Reaches, I think it is. It's not anyway. Maybe that's why, despite all of that, I still haven't quite grasped and grabbed ShadowDark with both hands yet, and have kind of more been focused on the white box cyclopedia as well as the dungeon adventures. I don't know. Don't know. It's weird. Life is weird. If you stuck with me this long, both thank you and I'm sorry. This has been a meandering one. It's all in one take. I don't edit these things. I tend to just start talking, and sometimes I get a little off topic. That's part of why I enjoy doing this. It allows me to kind of get stuff off of my chest in a way. I hope it's not too annoying for my audience. Anyway, sorry, but thank you. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And thank you again for 600 subscribers today. We hit that mark today, and that's amazing. I am astounded. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and peace be with you. Bye-bye.